This is day 14 of our family Advent story. This chapter is called The Law. Let's find out if Ishtar is able to save his little pet camel, Musa. Ishtar watched Rasad walk away, having condemned Musa to be left behind. "No!" he yelled, but Rasad kept walking. "This is ridiculous." Then he turned to Salamar. "Father, Musa saved my life." "Yes, he did," Salamar answered, "and this is the price he must pay for his bravery. He trades his life for yours, such as any good friend would do." Ishtar began to cry, and Salamar pulled him close. "I am sorry, but we cannot endanger the entire caravan for one injured camel." Ishtar looked at Musa through blurry eyes, thinking of the many hours he'd spent with the camel. Then, as if he was remembering too, Musa suddenly pulled his legs under him and stood up. "He's standing, Father, he's standing." "So I see," said Salamar. Rasad heard the commotion and came walking back. "You see," Ishtar shouted, "he is feeling much better and can walk now." Rasad looked at the camel up and down and then turned to Ishtar. "He is still injured and will still slow us down, but he must be left behind." With that, Rasad turned and walked away once more. All the anger and frustration Ishtar felt exploded from inside of him. "Why are you so mean?" he said. Rasad turned slowly, came back to Ishtar, and got down on one knee. "I am not mean," he said. "I only follow the law and rules that govern our lives, the law of the one true God and the rules of our survival. I am sorry for your camel, but he must be sacrificed for the good of all." "There are many gods, not one," Ishtar said, "and this is just a rule you made up." "I am a Jew, and I live under one God, and he is a God of laws and rules, all meant to keep our feet on a safe path." Salamar cleared his throat. "Caravansalar, the operation of the caravan is most assuredly your responsibility, and I would not try to oppose your authority. But is there not room in your knowledge of camels to allow for the possibility that Musa might be able to keep up with us?" Rasad looked at the camel in disgust, then to the camel healer. "What say you?" he asked. The healer studied Musa for several moments, then said, "He is much recovered and much stronger. He may perhaps be able to walk, but he cannot carry a load." "Very well," Rasad said with a sigh. "You may bring him along, but do not ride him, and do not put a saddle on his back." "No, sir, I will not," Ishtar said, grinning. Salamar smiled at his son, then the three men went back to their duties. Kazim loaded Musa's saddle on top of the load of another camel, and the caravan wobbled into motion. The moon was bright and it was easy to see, so Ishtar walked for many hours. Eventually, Kazim brought him a horse to ride on. "We will now begin training at night as well," he said. "You are becoming a good horseman and a good archer. It is time for you to learn the Parthian shot." "What is that?" Ishtar asked. Kazim sighed and shook his head. "With all your lessons, do they not teach you the most important things in life?" he said. Ishtar didn't answer, so Kazim explained. "The Parthian shot is a special technique that only we Persians know. It allows us to shoot backwards behind our horse in the midst of battle." "How will I see on nights there is no moon?" Ishtar protested. "You do not need to see. The horse will see for you." Twice each day, Ishtar changed the bandage on Musa, applying new ointment. On the third day, it was becoming routine, and Ishtar got a bit lazy. As he spread the ointment on the bandage, he yawned and sucked in a deep breath of the toxic fumes. Instantly, his head felt like it was splitting open. He held his head tightly and began screaming. "You are not injured," the camel healer said after examining Ishtar, "but your head will hurt for several hours." By the fifth night, Musa was strong enough to carry a saddle, and on the seventh, Ishtar started riding on him again. It was then that Ishtar thought up a plan. "Father, I know how to catch the assassin." The day was young, and Salamar was in his tent reading some scrolls, but now looked at his son with curiosity. Kazim had questioned everyone in the caravan, but they had no idea who was behind the attacks on the prince. Salamar laid down his scrolls. I'm listening. Ishtar told him the plan, and Salamar liked it. Then Kazim liked it, and even Rasad said he would go along with it. The next day was the 11th anniversary of Ishtar's birth. In honor of that, Salamar canceled Ishtar's lessons and declared it a day of feasting. Whatever foods could be gathered would be prepared for the occasion, but no millet, Ishtar said. Salamar laughed. No millet, he repeated. Everyone enjoyed the celebration held during the cool of the morning, since their days were still backward. Salamar commanded that the entire caravan gather together, and there was singing and dancing and eating. Salamar even brought out a piece of baklava he'd held back just for Ishtar. During it all, Kazim, Varta, Mahmud, Yazdan kept a careful watch to make sure there was no attempts on Ishtar's life. They were very obvious and conspicuous about protecting Ishtar so that no one in the camp could possibly miss them. As the sun edged toward the top of the sky, people began to get sleepy. It was time for bed. With a final cheer for Ishtar, Salamar thanked the people and then dismissed them to sleep through the day. Immediately, Ishtar, Kazim, Varta, and the 2 soldiers rushed back to Ishtar's tent, while the others waited outside. Kazim held his breath, held his nose, and entered through the flap. A few moments later, he came back out, holding in his hand a black creature. A fat-tailed scorpion, Kazim said. Most deadly, its poison kills in minutes. It was hiding between your bed blankets. Kazim said with a frown, and I do not believe he chose to hide there on his own. None of the other 5 were at all surprised. Then you must hurry, Ishtar said. Kazim nodded, handed the scorpion to Mahmud. Then, leaving Ishtar in the care of the others, he headed out across the camp. While he was gone, Salamar arrived. Well, he said, what is the news? In answer, Mahmud held out the scorpion. Salamar simply pursed his lips and nodded. They all waited in silence, but only a few minutes later Kazim returned, followed by Faraj, the old man who had seen the man who shot an arrow at Ishtar. Faraj walked bent over, stumbled twice, and held his head in obvious pain. What is this? Salamar asked. A man in great pain? Faraj looked at Salamar. A most devilish pain in my head, O noble one. Kazim said, you might have a cure for me. Salamar and Ishtar both looked at the man with disgust. I most certainly have a cure for the pain in your head, Salamar said, drawing his sword, but I shall leave it to the gods to decide your fate. Faraj looked up again, confused, and then he saw the sword. Master, what have I done to displease you? Salamar didn't answer. Instead, Mahmud simply held up the scorpion for the old man to see. Faraj started to tremble, then slumped to the ground. At that moment, Rasad rode up on his horse. What news is there? He yelled as the horse slid to a stop. Did Ishtar's plan work? Indeed it did, said Salamar. Then he pulled back the flap of Ishtar's tent, and in moments the air was filled with the scent of myrrh. You see, Faraj, we set out several pots of unprocessed myrrh in Ishtar's tent. It was the fumes from those pots that have given you the terrible pain in your head as you hid this in Ishtar's bed. Salamar took the scorpion and held it right in front of the face of Faraj. The old man jumped back. Kazim stepped in. You were the only one in camp with a pain in your head after the celebration, he said. It must have been you who placed the scorpion there. Shot Musa with the arrow, Ishtar added, and lured Ishtar into the devil's sand with the pomegranate, Varda said, and placed a snake in his tent, added Kazim. And poisoned the millet, Salamar said slowly, once again holding the scorpion in front of the old man's face. Then he whispered, there is no escape now. In a moment he looked at the old man's face, which had changed. No longer kindly and gentle, he set his jaw, he clenched his lips, and he narrowed his eyes. What I did for my people, he spat. This false prince must die, and all his family with him. Salamar was stunned. What insult have we inflicted on you that you would attempt to kill my son? Faraj looked at them all with even more contempt. My name is not Faraj, it is Fajad. And I come from the people of the Seleucids, whom you Persians conquered and destroyed without mercy. Salamar stood and shook his head slowly. That was 3 centuries ago, he said, and history makes villains of both sides. Why do you fill your heart with hatred for something that happened long before you were even born? The gods demand revenge, Vajad answered, no matter how long it takes. Then your gods are weak and cowardly, Salamar said, for only a coward would block reconciliation from his heart. Rasad ordered 2 soldiers to bind the elderly assassin, then led him away. We are almost to Salusa, he said, and within their territory, we will turn him over to the authorities there. Isn't that the home of his own people, Ishtar said. Will they not just let him go? The city still carries the name, Salamar answered, but the people have carried no ill will toward Parthia for 2 centuries. What will they do to him? Salamar put his arm around Ishtar's shoulders. He will be punished as their law demands. I do not know what that punishment will be. Ishtar had thought he felt safer after the assassin was caught and would finally be able to relax, but as he lay his head on his pillow in his father's tent that afternoon, his own tent still smelling of myrrh, sleep would not come to Ishtar for fear of all the evil people, poisonous creatures, and deadly situations that were still waiting for him just over the next sand dune. That's the end for today. Rasad was right. Our God is a God of laws and rules. If those rules are broken, people are hurt. So everyone must obey all the laws all the time or face the punishment of God. But that's impossible. As the people of ancient times learned, so no human can keep all the laws all the time. Sooner or later we mess up, and then God has to punish us. Since we couldn't keep the laws ourselves, and because he didn't want to destroy us with his punishment, God sent his own son, Jesus, to take our punishment for us. Just as Salamar was ready to take Ishtar's punishment at the start of the journey. We humans used to live under the law, but now we live under grace. A kind of forgiveness we did not earn and we do not deserve. Ephesians 2:8 says this, "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not from yourselves. It is a gift of God." Thank you, Jesus. See you tomorrow.